everybody. Welcome back to The Grid this week. It's another Scottless episode of The Grid. Last week I thought Scott was going to be back, and it turns out he's at his workshop in Venice. So we're here. This is going to be a landscape photography episode. We're going to talk all about landscapes. Topic today is what really matters in landscape photography. And my guest here is Rami. And Rami, you're a landscape photographer. And
to be.
Yeah, you're here down at KelbyOne. What are you doing?
Yep. Well, we were down here recording a course on landscape photography, post-processing of landscape photography, and now we're just on the grid, ready to talk about what's going on with.
We're going to talk about landscape photography. If you guys have any questions about landscape photography, Rami, just like last week with Peter. Rami's open for any questions about landscape photography. Are you open for any questions at all?
Any questions?
Any questions at all? So it's another one of those Ask Me Anything episodes. But we will be talking about what really matters. We were talking about it at lunch today. This is an exciting topic for me because I can actually talk about it this week.
Yeah.
Last week we were talking about portrait and headshot photography, and I'm like, I got nothing really to add to that conversation. Yeah. But anyways, so before we get started, I got to take care of some housekeeping business. Well, first, I wanted to show everybody so they understand who you are, what you do, a little bit of your work. So I've got your site up here on my computer.
Yep.
I probably have to connect it to the control room so Jason can do something with it. There he goes.
Yep.
So so this is some of your work. So you really, from what you know, we've shot together before. You really, a lot of your stuff is mountains,
yes.
Nature, wilderness, way out there. So kind of describe to everybody, you know, what you do, your style, you know, what you're all about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was always, since I was a little kid, really always intrigued by nature. I mean, I was, you know, when we were camping, I was happy. When we were going out there, I was happy. So being in the wilderness was one of those things that was the biggest thing for me. And when I found, and I was always an artistic person. So when I started, you know, when I picked up my first camera and head to, you know, one of those expeditions into the Yukon, which is right there, that picture you see right now.
So in Canada, in the Yukon.
Yeah, up in the Yukon, yeah. You know, I just fell in love with it right away. And for me, it's just all about the trip, getting there, the camping side of things, you know, getting one with nature and just dealing with the elements and finally capturing it and coming back and just, you know, not forget about the post-processing, how important it is. So I had to learn that for a few years, and that was challenging. But you know, once you put it all together, it's something that you're gonna look at and you're gonna enjoy, and you're gonna be able to hang it on your wall. Maybe you just remember that moment for the rest of your life. And my stuff is focused on landscape. So you know, I will in post-processing, what I'll do is I might add colors that are missing, mood and stuff like that. But it'll always be a true representation of the actual place that I go to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now I've seen you're primarily, so you're from Canada.
Yes.
So you primarily are shooting in Canada, but you've been other places around the world shooting.
Yes.
Now your favorite place to shoot, I've seen two. I think there's two favorite places because I've seen a lot of stuff from the Yukon and a lot of stuff from that Jasper Banff area.
Yeah.
Are those your two favorite places to shoot right now?
Well, right now they are, because I know them well. I'm very familiar with those two spots, and you know, I just keep going back to it because I also run photo tours there, and that's half the fun, which is, you know, getting there. So we go in the Yukon, for example, we have to get in there with a helicopter because there are no roads where we go. Yeah. So we take the guys up there, and then we will fly in with a helicopter, camp out, take the pictures, and then come out. And I know these places well because I've been doing them for a while. However, I've been, you know, to places like Switzerland, and I'm planning to go to the Baffin Islands of Canada.
Okay.
And I want to run tours there too. But right now, it's about just a personal trip to get to that level where I can just build the tours. But yeah, it's just all about finding extreme kind of locations.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I noticed about your photography. You like to put yourself into remote, unique locations, not just pull off to the side of the road and take a snapshot. It's like, let's go out and let's get into it.
Correct.
And that's like, we shot this winter up in Canada, and that's what it was. It was like really getting into it, really getting the shots. It's like on your portfolio here. I know that like that first image, I remember, shooting in that location, and then this other location over here.
That one.
And these are, this was one of my favorite locations right here.
I know, and that was just an amazing morning. We got there really well before sunrise, and that's actually a twilight shot. That's why you can still see a couple of stars in the sky and the sun coming out slowly, and you can see the shadows in the foreground from the moon behind us.
Yeah, we had that full moon right behind us. Yeah.
So that was cool.
That was epic. Yeah, it was a really cool morning. It was really cool. And that's what it is about landscape photography too for me, is not only being shooting, but being in that moment with nature, and being up there. It's so quiet, so peaceful, no noise. All you're hearing is that water running through that stream, and that's about it.
Absolutely.
So a lot different than here in Tampa or where you're from up in Canada. So but yeah, so we wanted so you're down doing a Photoshop class. You're doing real Photoshop Lightroom, but it's really advanced landscape post-processing.
True.
So really diving deep into the intricacies of how you do what you do.
Exactly.
Right? Because like we're going to talk about today, what really matters, one of the big things that really matters in landscape photography is the post-processing.
Exactly.
Kind of like back in the day, it was the dark room.
Exactly.
Nowadays, it's the post-processing.
Exactly. And this is the thing. I mean, today there's a lot of talk about, us pushing it too far sometimes in the post-processing. But to me, it's just really important, because back in the days, there was the same thing. It was back in the film days, they used to do dodging and burning. They used to even do composites in the film days.
Yeah.
Just nobody talks about it, right?
Yeah, I know a lot of what you do is the dodging and burning, which is basically, it's an old darkroom technique.
Exactly.
Right? So, speaking of Photoshop, one thing I do have to talk about is Photoshop World is coming up, and the early bird's about to end at the end of this month. So, if you're interested in going to Photoshop World, early bird's ending on April 27th. If you're a KelbyOne member, you obviously can get a discount above the early bird. And one cool thing about this year is we're at the Hyatt Hotel, which is it's basically at the hotel, the convention center there at the hotel. So it's really cool because it's all there. I've been trying to get Remy to go, but we'll see. I tell him, look, come down to Florida.
I would love to. I would love to.
Right?
It's just if time allows, my girlfriend.
And then at the end of the show, we're going to have a contest. We're going to be giving away a couple prizes. We're giving away the Platypod Ultra. I don't know if have you ever done anything with these?
The platypods, I mean, I've seen you use it a lot.
You see me use it, right? I love that. Thing.
We were up there in the Rockies, and we're all on our tripods, and he comes in with his platypod. He puts it on the ground, and then he's on one camera, and then he puts up his 3 cameras, and I'm like, well, that's pretty interesting. And I looked at it, I'm like, you know what? I may get one of these. It actually looks really interesting because you can put your camera down on the snow anywhere and get.
It has its little feet on it, so it grab into it. So I could push it out onto ice too. That I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to walk on that, but my platypod can go out there.
I know. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then we're also giving away the Flash book, Scott's new book on Flash. This is, basically the go-to book if you want to learn Flash and you're just like that person that just you can't ever Flash is kind of elusive to you.
Right.
For me, I don't really use Flash, but for people that using Flash, this all the feedback we're hearing about this book is that like this changed it. This made it to where it was simple to use Flash. I could use it. So I do want to get into it. I just haven't gotten into it yet. Peter was pushing me last week to get into headshots and portraits, but
I've used Flash before in my landscape shots.
Yeah.
For night photography. Milky Way. Yeah, just be able to just maybe lit that foreground for a little bit.
There you go.
But it didn't work out for me, and then I moved on to just basically natural light.
There you go. There you go.
So,
so let's jump right into our topic, though, kind of dig a little deeper than where we were at, because we were talking about, at lunch we were talking about, what really does matter in landscape photography, because a lot of times we get obsessed with the settings,
Yeah.
with the type of camera, with the lens we're using, what f-stop are we shooting at, what ISO are you set at, all these technical details. But when we were talking, you're like, well, that's not really what matters to me, And I think I'm the same way. Like, while that stuff is important, what is really important in landscape photography? And you had, so just go into I know you had a couple that were big for you.
Yeah, well, the biggest one is composition.
Right.
Usually people come up to me and say, well, what camera do you use? That's the number one question that I get. What camera do you use? What lens do you use? And my answer is always, it doesn't matter. I can tell you what camera I use and what gear I use, but it really doesn't matter. You got to really get the composition right. I started landscape photography. The first couple of trips I did, it was about 5 years ago. And I came back home and I looked at the pictures and I'm like, that is just horrific. I mean, how am I ever going to compete with the best out there that there's, these pictures that they're posting? Right. And I gave that up. I went to portrait just to make a little bit of money. And then I'm like, you know what? No, you don't give up. I went back to it and I started going on trips and I studied painters a little bit. And then I started painting myself, actually. That really helped me a lot to understand what composition is, because what you're doing is you're taking a three-dimensional world and you're transforming it into a two-dimensional file. Now, you have to understand that you need to do certain things to this file to basically, to have the viewer attached to it. So things like contrast adjustments, there's like atmosphere that's missing, there's haze that's missing, there's all these different kind of, techniques that you use to add transitions from dark to light, all that stuff you need to understand. And also the leading lines, the compositions and the lines themselves, the vanishing points, the right. circles, the reflections, all that stuff is something that you need to understand. So if you start understanding that, then I would say that you're on the right track. If you understand composition, then the rest just becomes history. Settings and cameras and all that is just literally doesn't
right. And that's what I did notice even shooting with you. One of the things that you spend a lot more where somebody else will walk out and just put the camera down, start shooting in a location, realize this wasn't the right location, move to another location. You don't really just put the camera down. No. You really walk around a lot. Yeah. You really study the lighting, the composition that's going on, and then you go take the camera out.
Exactly.
So it's almost like you're methodical in figuring out where's the composition for this location.
Yeah.
Because too, I think then it gets to the other things that you've talked about that are very important. You know what really matters. But that composition is a big thing, and I noticed that that's one thing that could help a lot of people is. When going out to a location is not just starting to take pictures.
Exactly.
But looking for the picture.
I could spend...
where is the picture here?
Absolutely. I could spend a week before clicking that shutter. So, I can go in... And most people, what they do is they go in and then they'll put their tripod down right away from wherever they think that is the best spot and start shooting. It's a good idea to go out there and have a look at the scene. With your camera in your hand, go around, take a couple of shots, or just look through the viewfinder, and then put the camera down. Because once you put that camera down on the tripod, now you're all of a sudden limited to just that angle. And just, ever so slightly moving that camera is going to make a world of difference.
Right?
So,
yeah, and that's a big one. That's something that really matters.
Yeah.
Is getting that composition, getting the framing right. So just to go to some comments here, because we got tons of questions. I saw way up. We got people from all over here. We got G.W. Clark saying good afternoon from Utah. We got Tom S. from Southern California. Blue Tie from Denver. We've got Jock's Photo from Hawaii going aloha, and then. We've got Chicago in the house, and then we got Cheeky Nando, all the way from Portugal, is over here saying Buenos Aires, Remy.
I hear that name
good
a lot.
Evening, Eric.
I watch a lot.
So everybody's playing the drinking game. Now's the time. We don't have any water up here, but if we did. And then Kevin from snowy Wisconsin. So, up right south of where you are. You were up in Canada. So that's where you're getting a break. We were talking about that at lunch. You're getting a real break from the weather, right?
I know.
So, but we do have some questions here. Like Cheeky's asking, what's your favorite ND filter?
My favorite ND filters, I use the brand called Haida, or however you want to say
That's
it.
what I use. Yeah.
Yeah, simply because it is affordable compared to like leaf filters, for example.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I put them side by side.
Yeah. The quality is the same, right?
And quality is the same. I get less color cast
Yep.
with the Haida than I get with the leaf filters.
Yep.
So
Me too.
for me,
Yep.
it's the Haida, yeah.
Yep. And then Keith's asking along those lines. He's
Right.
saying, how often would you use filters when creating your images?
Okay, so not often.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
When I was shooting with you for a week, I don't think you ever put a filter
No.
on.
I
Ever.
very rarely take out my filter. The only time I take my filter out is when there's too much light to create movement in water.
Yep.
And that's literally the only time that I use it.
Yeah, when you're shooting ice, you don't have to worry about that, right?
Exactly. and it's always dark when I shoot. It's always, late in the day or late, before sunrise.
Yep,
So
yep.
you've always got that time. And sometimes you can even get away with, I rarely take it out. Sometimes if I need to and I don't have my ND filter, what I'll do is I'll just put my camera to f/22, take a picture of the water, long exposure, then add that in. Because I don't care if the rest of
So
the
yeah,
image is soft.
you're doing comp basically.
Exactly.
Definitely, yeah.
So
you're exposing for
rarely
the water
I need, yeah.
and exposing for the scene.
Exactly.
And just compositing.
And I do that a lot. If your camera's on the tripod, I do that a lot. I just think about elements one by one. So I'm like, okay, let's capture the water properly. Then let's move over and capture the rest properly. So lots of things like, focus stacking and all that stuff. So
Cool.
yeah.
So, yeah, and we got other people. We got New Zealand in the house. Tony's saying, hey, Murray's from Ontario. That's right up where you are, right? And then we got Belfast. And then Vito's saying, on my way to Venice for a workshop. So he's going to Scott's workshop. Must be going to Scott's workshop, yeah. And Lynn's from Australia. And then there's Robio Wen saying, hello, Grid family. So Robio Wen is a longtime viewer.
Oh, yeah?
So there you go. And then Cheeky Nando, anybody who's playing the drinking game, Cheeky just said, advanced landscape post-processing, that looks great. So so along the lines of, talking about like what's really matters in landscape photography, one of the things you talked about was what really matters to you. And these are all your opinions, on stuff. This isn't gospel or anything. This is just, I've seen your work. To do your work, this is what you do.
Exactly.
So if you like your shots, this is what you do, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things that you were talking about was your love for nature and your love for the elements. That's very important to you in your landscape photography. So elaborate on that.
Well, I mean, sometimes you can go to these places and you spend so much time and so much money to get there. And you'll get there and, for whatever reason, you have so little time, but the weather is just terrible. And you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no way to call for anybody. And, sometimes you'll drive somewhere and you're driving through a wonderful place on the road and you just by luck, you get out and you get a perfect shot with the minimal effort. But then sometimes you go there and it's the exact opposite. You just have to be ready for it because what you're doing is you're chasing the light. Okay, it's not a studio where everything's controlled. This is Mother Nature can turn exactly. It can turn on you anytime. So you need to be prepared for it. The cold, surviving in the wild if you had to, if you got stuck, all that stuff. So you just gotta be prepared for it.
So that's like the, and I totally get what you're saying and totally agree with what you're saying. Of really when you get down to it, you need to have that love for, you're going to go do something that's outside of your control a lot of times, and you have to be cool with that. Exactly. And to know that sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not, sometimes you're going to have to work at it a little more, sometimes it's just going to be a gift like you're talking about. But you have to be willing to get into the elements too. It might be really hot, might be really cold. Might be freezing cold, because I've seen some of the shoots that you've been on. I wasn't on the one that you were doing
before,
but I mean you're out there 40 degrees below,
Oh, yeah.
taking those shots. The battery's wearing out in five frames,
Yeah,
so.
and that one shot with the in the river in the Rockies, that was like, I don't know, minus God knows what, and I was in the water, right? The one that
One
just
of
won,
these?
yeah, that one right there.
Yeah,
That
this
just
one.
won the landscape photo of the year for Canadian Geographic.
Yeah, this one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was right in the water there, so in waders, right?
Yeah.
And people look at me like he's crazy, but actually, the
Yeah, so
funny
you're
thing-
actually out in the middle of the river.
Yeah.
River is going by you.
Yeah.
In waders.
Yeah.
In negative
Yeah.
temperature.
But here's the funny thing that I noticed, that my feet started getting warmer when I was in the water, because the water is obviously warmer. It's not freezing.
It's above 32 degrees, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to know, If you're ever cold out in the, you just jump in
Jump
the water.
in the water.
Yeah, I don't
Just
think
don't get wet.
That's not good advice. Never mind. So, yeah, so I think that's really, that's a big topic, or a big thing in landscape photography that has nothing to do with gear.
Yeah.
It's just, you gotta appreciate and love nature and love that chasing the light,
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
also have to love the waking up early,
Of course, that's
staying after sunset, that kind of stuff.
But that's the thing. Like, I love photography so much that I hate waking up early.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it. I always hated it. Just getting out of bed was the worst thing that could happen to me. But every time now I wake up for a landscape sunrise shoot, I just do it because I love it so much.
Right.
That's what helped me out, because of my love and passion for this. And that's what really just makes everything easy, right? So
That's that last one, I think, was that same location.
that last one was
wasn't
at the same location,
Just
a
at a
little bit
different spot.
later. Yeah, a little bit later, and a different spot. Yeah.
it? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we got a couple more questions I want to ask you. So, Jox is asking, do you consciously think low key, or is it just your natural feel?
Okay, low key meaning like really just darker images, right? I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I think like
Yeah.
more low key.
Yeah. So yeah, what it is when you talk about shadows, you have to embrace them in landscape photography. A lot of people think about getting that photograph exposed properly, or what's properly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about an artistic image, it's my photograph, and I know that shadows are so very important, because when you look at the shadows take away from, if you add more shadows into the areas that are not important, that's gonna lead your eyes to where the subject or what's important. So you got to embrace those shadows, and I just really like low-key landscape photography, because I sometimes print them, and I just put like directional art lights on the certain
Makes
areas,
everything kind of poof,
and it's just a beautiful piece of art rather than just being one bright photo. And to be honest with you, most of my shots are shot during the blue hour or very late, so it gives you the mood, like it has to be a little bit dark because it was dark.
Yeah, if it was, it wouldn't communicate.
Exactly.
Well, and that's what Jock said. He actually asked something where he said in there, is that your mood? And I think that's where you get down to it.
Yeah.
It is about a mood and conveying an emotion
Exactly.
with your photography. It's and that goes for all landscape photography or all photography in general, period, right? What mood or emotion are you trying to convey with it?
Correct.
One of the things that you do is you do have a look. It's just Peter Hurley was on last week, headshot photographer. What did he say? He said, to everybody watching, he's like, you need to get a look. You need to get, you need to get a mood. You need to sell yourself as here's your look.
Yeah.
You know what look speaks to you, and that's obviously why you see that in your portfolio, to where it kind of carries over the whole portfolio, where it kind of feels the same.
Exactly.
But there's a big thing that we'll get to later on the post-processing side that I think that you do that a lot of people don't do with their photos, and something that I learned from you, that we'll get to a little later. But one of the other questions was about, I think I saw something up there about focus stacking. How often do you use focus stacking?
Very often. Very often.
Yeah, I remember you pretty much every shot you took, you at least focus stacked so you'd have it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Pretty much all my shots are focus stacked, and except things, if it's a long shot. But most of my shots are basically focus stacked. And the reason is, with my 15 or 14 millimeter lens, I'm getting really, really close to my subjects that are in the foreground. So my foreground elements are literally, sometimes we're talking about maybe 4 inches away from my lens. So in order to get the entire scene in focus, I'm always focus stacking. So I never take a shot. I always take one shot and literally move with the D850. It's amazing now.
You just click the screen, right?
It's amazing. Yeah. So,
but again, you can do that with any camera. It doesn't matter.
You can, of course.
What camera,
you can do that
what
with any
you
camera.
have.
Of course, and I was doing it.
It's just the technique, right?
It's just the technique.
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, we got to take a short break. When we come back, we will talk about those couple of, there's about 5 other things that that we talked about that we'll go over. We'll get to, there's a bunch of questions coming in, and we'll get to all those questions, and we'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by B&H Photo, the professional source since 1973.
Hey guys, we're back and we're talking landscape photography today with Rami, and we got tons of questions that are coming in. Want to get to some of the other topics that you said are really important. Before we get there, just wanted to talk about some upcoming stuff we got going on. Like we were just talking at the break here in the studio, and so last week we talked about we were a coast-to-coast video studio. We had productions going on here in Tampa. We had productions in Seattle. We're actually today what we're going to call an international video production studio, because we have a class going on right now in Venice, Italy. Yep. So Mimo Manani's filming a long exposure class, and Mimo's work is like insane.
I've seen it,
with the long exposure. So that's going to be awesome, because I really love long exposure. I can't wait for that class.
Yep.
Mimo's taught me so much about long exposure already. I can't imagine having a full class with him on it. So there's that. Then you're here from Canada, down in Florida, filming a class. So we are double international.
That's awesome.
Studio this week.
Yeah.
So, and you're filming that class on advanced landscape post-processing.
Yeah.
And then we're filming a class with Dave Williams from the UK on cinematic drone photography next week. So we are all over the map. So all these classes are going to be coming to KelbyOne.com. So if you're interested, just keep looking over there. Sign up. You can sign up. Just go up to the sign up tab, sign up, and check it out. There's tons of classes, new class every week. And like Scott, actually this week, big news was that there was a new version of Lightroom that came out. And Scott's already produced and put out a update class, all on the new updates in Lightroom. So he goes into everything. Actually, there's the class right there. So scroll down, there's a bunch of things on there. He goes over all the new things that are in Lightroom. So it keeps you up to speed with Lightroom. And that's one thing that's cool about, besides all the things that are cool, but I know I'm a little biased, but all the things that are cool with KelbyOne is that we stay on the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
A new release comes out, new versions of software come out, new cameras come out, everything. We're talking about it. So, but so back to, speaking of new things, landscape photography. One of the like we talked about, one of the new things for us is that post-processing, doing it in post.
Yep.
One of the things you talk about that really matters to you is you do a lot of contrast and luminosity masking. You said this really matters to you. So kind of explain to people like what you mean by that, or what they can, and actually we just had a question from Melanie who asked, your images are stubbing. Do you use luminosity masks?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So I do luminosity masking, and really that's the only way that you can get total control over your images. Now, luminosity masking,
because you're shooting in RAW.
Exactly. And we're talking about RAW files from cameras these days, like the D850. I mean, you can just push those files so much before you run into
you
problems.
need to post-process. You're shooting in RAW, you have to post-process.
Exactly. You just have to post-process because it's just plain flat. And I use the picture profile that I use is flat as well, so that makes it even more flat.
So you're like flat. I just want the flattest image.
Exactly. So then I can just add the colors if I want to. We're talking about luminosity masking now here. Now you can use luminosity masking for anything. not just colors, adding colors, adding contrast adjustments, working on your highlights and working on your shadows, but then targeting those adjustments that you make to your image using luminosity masking. So we're talking about layers of luminosity masking over luminosity masking, and it just gets crazy.
And I was watching one of the segments in the control room today. You went over all this in your class, like detailed step by step. Because that's one of the things that you went through with the class, which is really cool, is you take people each step of your process, and you applied it. You applied it to, I think, 3 different images. It wasn't just like it. This works for if you have a mountain, or if you have a beach, or if you have a stream. It doesn't matter your subject. The landscape photography, you can use these techniques. So it doesn't matter what you shoot. You do luminosity masking. You do a lot of contrast adjustments.
So all the techniques that I talk about in the course apply to every image. So you can just be as creative as you want. You just take those techniques, and I have really no secrets. That's the thing about me. I believe that everyone is different. I can teach you all the techniques. I can teach you everything that I know. That doesn't mean that you're going to go out there and take images like me. You can make images as good as me or better than me, but it's not going to have my style, because my style is my style, and your style is going to be your style. So I don't mind sharing. So
yeah, that's awesome. And we love that. I mean, that's what we are all about. So we're all about, sharing and passing on that knowledge and helping each other, lifting each other up.
Absolutely.
So another thing we talked about that, I'd like to get into a little bit more was, you said lighting is very important.
Yes.
But you've made a key distinction on the lighting part. You were because, understanding with lighting, you are reliant on the spin of the Earth around the sun, which is the lighting source, or the moon, so the lighting source. But you said it's not about the light, the quantity of light, it's about the quality of light.
Exactly.
So explain, why is that really important?
Okay. Well, most people, when they wake up for a sunrise or for a sunset, first of all, that's when most people shoot. And I really encourage you to shoot anytime, but when it's blue sky and it's just hard shadows everywhere. And we're talking about if the sun is high up. So in the Rockies, for example, remember, even at 2 p.m., we had the sun
it was
really
at 20
low,
degrees, 18
and
degrees.
it was just beautiful lighting. Yeah, so, I mean, most people think about the colors. They want intense sunsets and sunrises, and they want all that stuff. But it's not about that. It's about the quality of light and how it's hitting your subject. So we're talking about soft lighting. We're talking about things that create these little shadows. Golden hour, when the sun is low. The blue hour, or even the twilight, when the sun's already gone and it's just the reflected light from the sky, when everything is just so nicely lit.
Yeah, so blue hour, the hour after sunset. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what really is, to me, is the most important thing. It's just about the quality of light and when you shoot. If you don't have colors, don't worry about it. You can always deal with it later. It's about how it's hitting your subject.
Yeah, because you can't change. We were talking about there's 2 things you can't change in post, right? Composition and lighting.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So you got to get composition, you got to get lighting. Then it's about the post-processing.
Exactly.
It's about taking that raw file and doing something with it.
Yep.
Cool. Well, one of the other things that we were talking about, and this is where I was talking about, so then lighting is very important, and you were talking about colors. They're important, but they're not, as important as the lighting as far as that. But one of the things that you, I understood this going into it, but you helped to explain it a little bit, more, and I see how it comes out in your work. And this is something that's very big for you, and a thing that really matters is color theory. And you go a lot in depth into color theory. So just a little quick overview for people who are doing landscape photography. Why is color theory important? And what is color theory, or what is color theory and how it applies to landscape, and then why is it important?
Okay. Well, color theory is one of those things that, again, it becomes really important. Like we talked about composition before and how it's important, how it can affect your images, where color theory alone is going to affect the complete, entire composition. For example, I'll give you a good example, like a musician playing something on a piano, and it sounds amazing until he goes off and he decides to just play some random notes, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, that just sounds terrible.
Yeah,
you
it
don't
sounds
want to
like
hear
noise,
it.
yeah.
Exactly, you don't want to hear it. So color is exactly the same thing. The reason that those notes are playing well together is because there's harmony between the notes. Now, when you look at a picture, it's exactly the same thing. If you have two colors that are fighting each other and they're not harmonious, well, it's not going to work. So what I do in every of my images, I go through them and I make sure that the colors that are there are harmonious and they match. If one color is off, and rarely in the nature you're going to get something that's actually got some color harmony in it. You always almost have to, especially when you got 2-3 colors, you have
You
to shift
tweak it
them.
a little
You have
bit.
to tweak them, shift the hues until you get to that part where they're all complementing each other rather than hurting the composition.
Yeah, like for these images, like so you're bringing out, what are you doing here? So you're bringing.
So here is actually if you look at it exactly, we're talking about only two colors. Okay, there's some yellow and there's some orange. Okay,
Right.
and
you've kind of isolated it down to where those are the
Exactly.
prominent colors and everything
Exactly.
else is just.
And I actually
there.
got the colors around my my shadows there, and I just basically decreased everything. Like I brought the saturation almost all the way to nothing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So sometimes to emphasize on the color, I will desaturate everything around it rather than just saturating the other stuff. And
Right. So you're removing color
Exactly.
in order to accentuate other colors that are pleasing together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's one thing that I've been.
Yeah,
I've been
and these
doing
color harmonies, like you can go online, you can search for them. There are, like painters will know that, graphic designers will know that. It's very important to them, right? So there are certain colors that work together, certain colors that won't work together, and it's all about the color wheel. And it's all,
So you can go online and even in Photoshop.
Yep,
Photoshop
yep.
has
There's a
it,
tool called the Adobe Color Theme.
Yeah.
So you open that up, and then you select your main color, and then according to that color, it's going to show you the rest of the colors that are.
You can say, well, what's a complementary color?
Complementary color
what's
to that.
a triad color?
Or analogous or all that stuff.
And they've got, and it just basically tells you what to
Exactly.
kind of push the colors towards. Because that's a big thing. If I look at your portfolio and look at your work, that I do see a lot of is where you've balanced the colors to where it's not like everything's fighting with the image. It's like it's down to just a few colors that are speaking to you, and all the rest are going away.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, it's really cool. Like even like this one,
Yep. That one was a tough one because I had to. Those greens that you see, they were actually yellow.
Okay.
So I had to turn them to green in order to get that, and
In
the
order to
blue
play
in the
it off
sky as
the-
well.
yeah.
So we got three colors here. We got the orange, or reddish orange, which is on the mountain, which is on the bottom of the frame and to the right side.
Yeah.
And then you got the blue, and then you got that green. So these three colors are sitting on the color wheel in a way where they complement each other. It's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're exactly in harmony.
Exactly.
And then you roll those colors together, and that way, when you look at the image, those are the three prominent colors that you're seeing.
Exactly.
And we go, oh, that's pleasing.
Yes.
Oh, that feels good. Like it's just humans. How
Exactly. And if you go to my website, actually, I have an article that actually talks about that specific image. So the article section, it'll have one article that says exactly that one.
This one.
Yeah, that one actually gets into really
like
just
these. Yeah.
exactly. It'll show you what color.
Well, there's that
harmony
one,
is.
right? So
Yep.
there's that
So
one.
I encourage you to read that. It'll really help you. Yeah, exactly, right there.
Yeah, and that's a big one. I mean, that really does change, and I've used that even with my photography and other subjects. What I shoot, trying to isolate certain colors and trying to make them more pleasing, and because I think at first you start getting into it, and you're like, oh, just take the vibrance and the saturation up and just make it all. But then it's like everything's just screaming at you.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times, even too, if I'm doing something quickly, I'm going into the hue, saturation, luminosity inside a Lightroom and just messing around in there if I need to do something quick. Now you go a lot deeper than that, and you go over that in your class where you get into Photoshop and do like crazy stuff in Photoshop.
Yeah, I do
with it.
very little work in Lightroom.
Yeah.
I just use it to organize my files and basically adjustments like bringing up the shadows or exposure if I needed to. And then from then on, it's just all in Photoshop. And I use almost no third-party software like plugins and all that. It's
Okay.
just all in Photoshop.
Okay, cool. So we got a bunch of questions here, so I got to start getting to some of these questions. So maybe
They're fun,
if we want to scroll up to the top, and then we'll start rattling through them, because I know I saw a bunch of them coming in. Where are we at? So Jerry's just making a comment that fantastic photos, so much atmosphere and mood.
Thank you.
And then let's see. So trying to get. So Jock's photo is saying something about Instagram, and this is I just your opinion on this.
Yeah.
So Jock's photo said, "Cautionary note: while I love Instagram, I'd encourage you not to be so specific with locations. Hotspots are already maxed out. Also, sometimes I'm prepared, and inexperienced photographers get in over their head. Example was a tourist fell 400 feet off of a very advanced trail 2 days ago. And then he said, remember Hill Street Blues motto, let's be careful out there. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I never share my location. So if I'm posting an image from the Rockies, it'll say the Rockies.
So you post a location in a roundabout, like you're in Jasper National Park, but Jasper National Park is so big that there's no way of understanding where that is, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And I mean, that's one of the reasons that my clients come on my tour, because I know where to take them. And if I was able to share that information all over the internet, then
Right. Well, but then I see what he's saying is sometimes too with your locations, you're getting way out there.
Exactly.
To where it starts getting into, you have to have the right gear, you got to have the right equipment, you got to have a sat phone because you're going to be off the grid.
Of course.
You got to have power and backups, which that was a question that I did see come through.
About the batteries or something.
Somebody was asking. Carl's asking, how many batteries do you bring on location? So when you go out on those Yukon and those national park trips where you're off the grid, like how much do you take?
I don't know, 10.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you gotta have,
especially with colder climates, right?
Exactly. So especially in the colder climates, you can use up the batteries pretty quickly. So bring up a lot of batteries and keep them warm. Keep them with you in your jacket if you're going somewhere cold, because they can run out pretty quickly. You'll be surprised how quickly they run out.
So Tom Mask is asking, is it a good idea to use Google Earth to scout out areas prior to traveling and to save money?
Oh, absolutely. I'll never go anywhere without Google Earth.
How much do you use Google Earth?
Yeah, well, I use Google Earth every time I want to go somewhere that I don't know. If I don't know the place, I'm going to be going to Google Earth and I'm going to be looking at it, because you can tell, by just looking at it, where the sun's coming from, where you need to be. You can even see images from that area. So it really helps me a lot, and it's a big part of my and even Google, just the regular website, the Google image. What is it? When you go to Google Maps, and you go into the satellite mode, it's like Google Earth. It's it's amazing. Yeah,
very cool. And then Jerry's asking along those lines, so we know you go to Google Earth, but what do you do before a trip to prepare research for the photographing a new area? Obviously you use Google Earth.
Yeah.
Is that your number one thing?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, this whole thing brings up the really important fact that in landscape photography especially, planning is so very important.
Right.
If you don't plan it right, you can get there and spend thousands of dollars and come out with really just bad shots because you just didn't plan it right. So planning is really important, and I use Google Earth first. First of all, I know where I'm going. First of all, I want to find out where I want to go to. Like, for example, if it's in the Himalayas, for example, this is one of my top places that I want to go to, and I still haven't got a chance.
So you want to go to the Himalayas. What do you start?
So I start basically going on Google Earth or Google Maps and just looking at some images. And then I'll go in and I see some of my favorite shots from others. Okay? And I am going to do everything I can to try to find out where that was shot. Not by going and asking the artist, because he's probably going to come and say no. But just by going to, and I've done that a lot of times. I've looked at the shot, and then I looked at like images from the area. I mean, I can spend a full day looking at one image, and then I found locations like that. I go into maps and I just keep, going around and zooming in, and there you go, you found it. But like, how much time did I spend? literally 12 hours. Like one day, I was 12 hours nonstop finding one location. I finally did. And, that picture brought me to the Yukon.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody was going to, not a lot of people have gone to the Yukon. You know? And it was really hard for me to find this location. It's just all
very
about
remote.
research. Yeah.
Very remote. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I know, and that's a big one. I know that was when we were out and we were traveling. We were kind of doing some back road stuff. I remember we came up on a location.
We did.
And I remember when you turned to us and he said, "All right, nobody, you post this GPS coordinate."
That's right. It's that.
Don't post anything.
Yeah, it's that shot over
it's
there.
It's that one, the first one in your portfolio, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So nobody.
Nobody's allowed to post this. Turn off your phones.
Turn off your phones. Take our batteries out. Throw it away.
Well, the good thing is we didn't have signal, so nobody could
you were
post
way
it
off
anyways.
The grid. So, a couple other questions here. So, Johan's asking, with the latest Lightroom and Photoshop updates, are there improvements for your post-processing workflow? So, meaning with the Photoshop and Lightroom updates that are coming out, like, did you see any benefit from it, or if you?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, tools are getting better.
Yeah.
In general, like the removal tool or all that stuff, the cleanup tools and all that. So spot removal is getting better and better. So yeah, it definitely helps a lot. Helps out a lot. But it's not that huge. I mean, even with the old version of Photoshop, all you need is really brushes and luminosity masking. You can do
So
a lot.
you basically you look at the tools that are coming out, kind of see if they'll fit into your workflow. If they do, you use them. If they don't, you've got enough tools in there to do what you're doing right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so happy with Photoshop.
Do you use TPE app? It's the photographer's.
Oh yes, I do use that. I use that.
I always forget the last word. It's some Latin word.
Yeah, the photography firmers or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I use that a lot, and I use that for when I need to know when the moon's coming up, when the moon's going down, at what time of the year exactly the moon will be up. Like if I'm going to shoot the Milky Way, for example, I need to make sure that there's no full moon, or if it is, when is it coming up? All that stuff. So I usually use it for moon and just knowing when the sun's going to come up and down. So yeah, I use that definitely.
So Jose's asking, does it make sense to use a polarizing filter for those pre-dawn, post-sunset time of day? And if not, I guess, when do you use polarizing filters, if ever?
I never use polarizing filters.
Yep, you've never used one.
Never, ever. The only time, I always have one in my kit. I rarely take it with me, but the only time that I want to use it, and I will use it, is if I want to get the reflection either off of the water or add reflection to the water. That's the only time that I will use the polarizing. But colors, luminosity masking.
Right. So basically, I mean, if you're looking through your portfolio, you're not really, most of these shots, you're not using a polarizing filter.
No, none of them. None of them are using polarizing filters.
Okay, cool. TNT Town's asking, how do you keep from over-processing?
That's a good question. I sleep on it.
Yeah?
So usually I tend to go a little bit overboard, and then what I do is that I just either just take a rest, because I can spend hours. We're talking about 8 hours sometimes on one image, and that gets really tiring, and you can't judge anymore. So,
and then you start turning it up to 11, and then you're like, I need to bring it back just a little bit.
Yeah. So I just go and have a coffee, get my eyes off the computer, maybe even sleep on it, come back the next day, and then what I do is I go back and forth between my raw file and what I did. Back and forth between them constantly as I'm going through.
Yeah, to see it, like, how far did I push this thing? Did I push it too far?
Constantly I'm going back and forth, and usually that helps me a lot.
That's a good technique.
Just by refreshing your eyes quickly by looking at the original raw file, you'll be like, oh no, that's a little too much there. Let's just back it down a little. So yeah.
Cool. So Jock's just making a comment, but then has a question of that 2 of his best-selling prints have both a warm yellow and cool blue complementary colors. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So as long as it's in one of those harmonies, it's complementary.
The complementary is when you have 2 colors that are exactly on the opposite side of the wheel. So you turn it
Correct,
anywhere.
yeah.
You get
You
two
see that a
colors.
lot in movies
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
That's where you get that, where they'll play with the blue and the yellow, like
Exactly.
the warm
Right there,
orangish blue. Yeah, and they play with that. You
Yep,
know,
and that's a good tool, by the way, too. What is it?
color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, it's a great tool to use, and that'll take you through all the different ones you got.
Yeah, but the one thing to mention is that it does not include all the color harmonies.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into way more
Yes.
detail, right?
Yes.
Those are the main ones.
Those
that
are the
people
main
use.
ones, but when...
Let me ask you
when-
this: do you use the main ones, or you ever gone like and done some of those wild, wacky ones?
Oh yeah, I've used
Yeah.
all of them, like for my fall
Yeah.
colors sometimes. So, but here's the thing: you use the color theory is one of those things that you're gonna work on, and you need to spend a lot of time working on it. But you're gonna get to a point where you're not gonna need it at all. You are going to know what works best. And I am to that point where I don't even look at my colors anymore. I just know what I need to shift this blue to match the other one. So you'll get there. You just need to practice. That's all it is. Lots of practice.
So I got a question. This
Yeah.
is a philosophical one
Oh.
from Robin is asking. So you are manipulating colors. Isn't that changing the image? I tend to document what is there and not change things. So what's your philosophy on that?
My philosophy on that is that you can do what you want to do, and this is my art. And you know, if I need to present my image to look right and to make it stand out, and you know, have a color harmony that's going to basically stand out from the rest, I need to do what I need to do. That's what it comes out to at the end of the day. You have the traditional artists that don't do any color tweaking at all, which is totally fine, and it's your style and it works for you. That's fantastic, no problem. But you know, I just have to tweak them most of the time. Unless
I think I picked up on a key word there, and she said document.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I classify your style as, and then you use the word, that's my art.
Yes.
And those are the two differences there.
Exactly,
I mean,
there
I
you
do
go.
think that there's a place for, you know, saying I'm just going to, you know, photojournalism, document, take the image, and that I want it to be the image that that exactly saw. And then there's art. And then there's the
Exactly.
artistic interpretation of what you saw.
Exactly.
And I think I'd almost put your style into photo artistry. So, yeah, so we got to, going into photo artistry.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about the art. So for me, it's an art form.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's one thing that I do know. Like I was here with you when you took this image on the screen there, and I was there, and I don't think it's far from reality.
Yeah.
It's just you've taken it to that point where it looks like art.
Yes.
But that was the scene.
Exactly, and that's my main thing.
Like it. I
Yeah.
mean, you might think, well, he pushed it a little too far. I mean, I just think you go at the right time, you get the right subject, and that's that. So, so we got to wrap up here soon. So I just got to run through a couple questions here. How much gear do you take on locations?
Not a lot. Just my
No.
lens, camera, tripod, and a trigger, and lots of batteries.
And then, have you ever gone to the Lofton Islands in Norway?
No, I would love to though, on the list. But
All right.
it's getting crowded.
So, and then where can people find out more about you, social media wise?
On the website is the best
the
because I have
website.
all the photo tours, all the everything.
Yeah, so you do photo tours.
Yep.
What do you have right now? Let's see.
So I've got a few lined up in the Rockies and the Yukon.
So you're going to the
And-
Yukon.
Yep,
You're going to the Rockies.
yep. And it's all there.
And then you've got astrophotography one, huh?
Yeah, that's in Ontario actually.
Cool.
I got a good spot there.
Cool.
Going with a boat.
Sweet. Yeah, that looks really cool. And yeah, so you're way out and like remote there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And then then from there they can find your Facebook. Oh yeah, down here, Facebook and Instagram, right from your website.
Yep.
Down at the bottom.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
there.
So, and there's your Instagram. So, the longest Instagram name on Instagram, right there, right?
Yeah.
Ramtin.Kazemi.photography. So if you want to follow him, there you go. So probably just go to his website, adventurephotocanada.com, scroll to the bottom, and you'll find it, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, we have to get to the contest. So with the contest, if you guys are interested in winning the Platypod, you're interested in winning the Flashbook, just go to KelbyOne.com/contest. On that site, you'll have a form, fill out the form, and in the comments, just tell us if you want to win the Flashbook, if you want to win the Platypod Ultra, and then one lucky winner, we'll ship it out to you, no matter where you are. So, and that's about it. Yeah, so venturephotocanada.com, your class is coming out in probably a couple months, so look to KelbyOne for that.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of people were very excited. That's like the comments now at the end. Melanie was like, "Can't wait for the class." Robin said, "Such beautiful images. Can't wait for the class." Steve's saying, "The photos are motivating. Can't wait to see the class." So I think everybody's really excited about it. And I watched some of it today. I'm really excited about it because I'm sure I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff from it. So very cool. Well, guys, thanks for joining us this week. Next week, let's see. I'm not sure. Do we know who's on the grid next week, Jen? Stand by. I'm not familiar with it. So next week there will be a show and somebody will be here. So there you go. But yeah, guys, so check out Rami's site, check out his work, and look for his class on KelbyOne. And thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week on the grid.